Before I give this talk, I would like to thank all the people who have helped me become the person that is standing before you today. My parents, my family, my teachers, and my family at Millbrook here. You know who you are. Thank you for everything you have done for me. In 10 days, I'm going to graduate, and my time at Millbrook will come to an end. It hurts me to see my time in high school come to a close, and I will never forget all the friends and memories that I made here. I can say from the bottom of my heart that I do like Millbrook, and I will miss it dearly. However, this was not always the case. I did not always have this love for Millbrook, and I spent too much of my time here with the wrong mindset. Today, I will tell you all the story of what I did to go from hating myself, my life, and my school, to being grateful for everything that I have. I tell you this not out of pity, but out of honesty. My life is not an Instagram page that only shows the highlights. I don't want to hide how I felt or what my experiences were like. I hope that by telling my story, it will help those who feel currently or have felt like me in the past find their way. Ever since I was little, I've always loved being the center of things. I am an extrovert and a very social person, and I feed off of other people's energy. Because of this, when COVID hit, life became difficult for me. I lost the end of my final year at the middle school I've been going to for over 8 years, and I wasn't able to see my friends over that summer. I became lonely and depressed, gaining weight, and spending most of my time on the computer playing video games and watching YouTube. The only thing that kept me going was high school, as I believed that I would finally be able to hang out with people again. I pictured myself being super popular and going to crazy parties every weekend with lots of girls, because that was what happened in all the high school movies that I watched. The first difficulty I encountered with high school was the dorms. Because I was a day student, I was not allowed in any of the dorms, and we had to keep all our backpacks and clothes in the locker in the athletic center. This formed an immediate barrier between me and the other kids, because the only way I could get to know people was through class. To say that I struggled making friends was an understatement. I was awkward and not well socialized, and I lacked confidence. When it came to any social situation, my immediate instinct was to put myself in the center of all the action. So that's what I did. I would look on Snap Maps to see where everybody was and go there. However, I did not know how to properly interact with people. I wanted to be popular and get people to like me, but in doing so, I pushed them away. I would try to force my way into friend groups that didn't want me. Whenever someone popular said a joke, I would laugh at it like it was the funniest thing in the world. If I said someone, and someone who a lot of people liked disagreed with me, I would change my mind and agree with them. If I wanted to be friends with someone, I would change my opinions to fit their beliefs. I did these things not because I cared about these people, but because I wanted to be in the center of all the action and have lots of friends. I hadn't been socialized enough to know how to properly interact with people. I now know that being confident in oneself and not being afraid to speak your mind is what makes other people like you. But at the time, I was too scared to stick up for myself. So I thought the way to get people to like me was to glaze them 24/7 and follow them around all day. It was not. Another aspect of COVID that negatively affected me was the dining hall. Because of social distancing, there are only 6 seats at a table. If you pulled up an extra chair, 50 teachers would come running across the room to stop you. This led to my first reality check on how other people viewed me. In my first or second week, I found myself walking from class to the dining hall by myself to get lunch. Not wanting to sit alone, I approached a table of fellow freshmen and asked if I could sit with them. They told me no, and that the seats were reserved. I went table to table, asking if they had an empty spot, but all the tables in the dining hall were full because they only had 6 seats. One table of sophomore girls offered me a seat, but my ego was still too big to accept their offer out of pity. Instead, I sat outside in the pouring rain, alone, because it was the only place where I could find a spot. I held up my phone to my ear and pretended like I was having an important call so people would think that the reason I was sitting outside was that I was on the phone, not that I had no friends. Seeing me sitting outside in the pouring rain, a few people came outside and offered me a seat. Thank you to those people, I remember you. But I told them that I was on the phone to save face, because I didn't want them to know that I was a loser. After a few minutes, I went back to the servery and cleaned my plate. There was still plenty of food on it, and I was starving, but I would rather my stomach hurt than worry about what other people thought of me. After that, I stopped going to lunch unless I was walking to the dining hall with a group of people. Even though my stomach would hurt so much because I hadn't eaten all day, I would still wait until I got home after school was over to eat. The year only got worse for me after that. Saturday and Friday nights were a big struggle for me. At first, all the freshmen would hang out in one break group, so I could just go there. Soon, they split off into other groups, leaving me with nowhere to go. I would follow around a group of kids until they told me to get lost. I remember one night I approached a group of kids in the dining hall, and they started talking about whose turn it was to walk the dog. I was confused until one kid got up and told me to walk with him, and we started walking away from the other kids down the hall out of the dining hall. I was waiting for him to tell me what the word was when I looked to my left and discovered that he had done a 180 and was walking back to the other kids. I turned around and walked back to the kids, and he repeated the same process. I later learned that I was the dog, and walking the dog was a term where one kid distracted me so the rest wouldn't have to hang out with me. Now you may think that these problems were not real problems, that these struggles with making friends were not real struggles. Well, I thought that too, and that belief was what turned a minor problem into a major problem. At the time, I thought I was too privileged to be experiencing anything bad or to be upset. I was a rich white kid going to a boarding school that cost a lot a year. In Millbrook, there are kids in countries across the world whose whole family has been killed by terrorists or have to work 14 hours a day in a factory just to be able to eat. So I assumed that my loneliness and depression were just rich people problems that weren't real, and that I was just being weak. So I pretended like everything was great and lied to myself that everything was fine, when really it wasn't. People from home would tell me how lucky I was to go to a boarding school, and I would tell them how great it was and how much I loved it, when in reality I hated Millbrook and everything that came with it. When my parents would pick me up on a Saturday night, I would tell them how I had so much fun, when in reality I sat on the athletic center couches for hours on my phone, hoping someone would come and talk to me, but nobody did. I knew that I felt depressed, but I refused to admit that I actually had depression. I thought the best way to make myself feel better, the best way to be a man and not be weak, was to fix it all on my own. So I refused to reach out for help and maintained a tough outer shell. Now, do we think this mindset magically fixed everything and made me gain lots of friends? Or made my problems way worse and made me spiral further into depression? I think you all can guess. As a result of not getting this help, things got worse for me. I began to believe that the reason no one hung out with me was because there was something inherently wrong with me. Insecurities developed. I thought that no one liked me because I was ugly. I thought that no one liked me because I was 5'8", and that if I was 6'3", I would have lots of friends. I would spend hours every day messing with my hair because I cared so much about what other people thought of me, and I didn't want people to see my big forehead. While it seems silly now, these little insecurities gave me anxiety. I worried about how my hair looked. I worried about what clothes I was wearing. I worried if I looked stupid. So much worrying that I was always stressed 24/7. So now not only was I depressed, I was anxious too. Eventually that summer, my facade cracked. I couldn't handle it anymore, and I admitted to my parents that I needed help. This came in the form of a therapist that I began seeing once a week. This was probably top 10 best RIA decisions of all time. Seeing a therapist absolutely benefited me. I now had someone to talk to instead of having to keep all the feelings bottled up inside of me. I didn't have to live in fear of being judged for what I was going through, or sounding like a spoiled rich kid with first world problems, because the therapist's job was literally to listen to me complain about everything. However, this was not a solution. It was merely a band-aid on a mind that was falling apart. While therapy helped, I still had real problems that needed fixing. I had serious social anxiety and extremely low self-esteem. And therapy would not make that go away. I still only saw myself through the eyes of others and focused on what other people thought of me instead of doing what I wanted to do. Looking back through my English journal in Mr. Fewer's class that year, almost every day was a bad day. All my morning writings were about how anxious or nervous I was, and there were very few writings about how I was happy or excited for that day. Prior to high school, my life had been mostly good. Nothing bad had ever happened to me. I had lots of friends, and people always loved being around me. But now that I had been in high school for a full year, and I was still in the same situation, I wasn't sure what my future would hold. I wondered if I had peaked in middle school, and that this was what the rest of my life was going to look like. I pictured myself in the future, eating alone during lunch at work, my coworkers hanging out all together without me. I imagined myself at 30 still being alone, not being invited to anything, and nobody wanting to spend time with me. That wasn't a future I wanted to be a part of, and if that was how my future was going to be, then I would rather not have a future. So something needed to change for me to give me hope, because I was running out of hope. However, that winter, during my sophomore year, the change that I needed happened. Dr. Lacoste asked me to join the engineering team, and I agreed. This was again one of the best decisions I ever made. If I hadn't joined the engineering team, I don't know if I would be here to give you guys this talk right now. Being part of the engineering team finally gave me a purpose. Originally, I was tasked with building a rocket for the American rocketry competition. However, I soon got bored of this and decided I wanted to build a flamethrower instead. Doc told me I could, so I got to work. I finally had something to do at Millbrook other than trying to get people to like me. All the energy that I had spending to appeal to others, all the time I had been wasting to try and hang out with people, was finally available. I had given myself a sense of purpose. After a year and a half of failing, I finally had the chance to succeed at something. I poured all my time into building that flamethrower. Instead of sitting in the athletic center alone on Friday and Saturday nights, I would stay in the lab until 11 working on the flamethrower. I swore to myself that I would no longer worry about what other people thought of me, and I would only focus on myself 100%. I realized that if I wanted to truly be a man, I had to learn to take care of myself and not care about what others thought. I started going to lunch, forcing myself to eat even if it meant sitting alone. I would spend hours in the lab every day, and I made that lab into my home. As a result of focusing on myself, I began to improve. My anxiety began to get better, and the good days started becoming more common than the bad days. Grinding long hours in the lab gave me something productive to do. I no longer sat around all day, scrolling on my phone, feeling sorry for myself. Instead, I worked in the lab. Most importantly, it gave me something to be proud of. By the end of engineering, my work on the flamethrower was done. I played with it a few times, and after that it got scrapped for parts without my knowledge. You know who you are in the crowd. But that didn't really matter to me, because I didn't care about the flamethrower itself. What mattered was the personal growth that I underwent. I had an idea to do something that I wanted. I worked really, really hard on that idea. I overcame difficulties on the way, and I succeeded and turned that idea into a reality. Having gone through this process, my self-confidence improved. I knew that I was capable of impressive feats, so I no longer felt scared to disagree with people. I was able to stand up to my social anxiety and started making more friendships. That spring, things got a lot better. I did really well in lacrosse. I got closer to the Millbrook community. I pulled Juliet. Now I'd like to say that from then on, everything was perfect and I had lots of friends. But it wasn't all sunshine and rainbows. Junior year I regressed, and things were bad for me again for part of that year. But I bounced back and didn't let that affect me because I had built the confidence in myself. As of today, I can proudly say that I am happy. I almost never feel anxious or depressed. Do I sometimes have bad days? Of course, everybody does. But I have changed and I have fixed my problems. I still have things that I'm working on. I'm not perfect. If you looked at my progress tab on Blackboard, you would understand. But I'm up, and every day I'm getting slightly better. So if you were somehow not paying attention during all that, here's what I had to say to you. If you're down, if things aren't going well for you, if you would like how you used to be, here's what you need to do. First, you need to admit that you aren't doing so well and figure out what you are doing that is causing you problems. Second, you need to choose one thing that you really want to do. This could be going to the gym, improving your grades, getting better at a sport, or it could be something stupid that you just want to do for fun, like build a flamethrower. Third, you need to work really, really hard at that one thing and stick to it, even if this means missing out on fun or seeing your friends to get your work done. If you do all this and stick to the hard times until you have accomplished what you set out to do, I guarantee you, even if it's just a little bit, things will magically get better. And if you keep repeating that process and work hard, then eventually you can get the courage to stand on this side of the podium. Thank you all.